and welcome to Why Such a Fuss, an exciting new podcast for small businesses and charities who want to gain a better understanding of data protection. I'm Christina from CVG Solutions, a fully qualified data protection professional. I'm passionate about educating, empowering, and enabling businesses to thrive. So get ready to embark on a journey of growth and knowledge as we dive into the world of data protection. And I promise you, the material is engaging with many interesting guests. Hello and welcome back to Why Such a Fuss podcast. Today we have James Fowler from Apptech, a cybersecurity and IT managed service provider. Hello, James. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well, Christina. I'm really excited to dig into this one.
Oh, good. Excellent. Excellent. Because the reason why I've invited you back is because I want to talk about marketing. And I know that you have a lot of knowledge and experience in these areas in over 25 years. And I know that you have experienced situation where data in the marketing environment has been disrespected. And so I thought your input would be quite valuable. So I'll bring you in a minute because I just wanted our audience, I wanted to just explain a little bit how GDPR has a touch point with direct marketing. So actually it doesn't. In terms of GDPR doesn't really deal with direct marketing or marketing in general. And this is one of the big misconceptions that is out there, because actually marketing is regulated by the Privacy and Electronic Communication Regulation, which is called PECA for short. And really what the instructions, if you want, from the PECA is that when an organization is targeting and sending promotional material via electronic means, so that's your emails, your SMS, even your website, to end consumers, so to individuals, then the consent is required. And so this is where the touch point with the GDPR comes in, because the consent, in order to be valid, it needs to fulfill the GDPR criteria. Now, what the PECA also instructs is that if the end consumer has bought or requested a quote, so in other words, they have demonstrated, a great interest into your products or services, then as an organization, you can use the soft opt-in. And that means that you can add them to your mailing list and you can then start sending them communications that are promotionals in nature. However, what you must always remember is to offer them the option to opt out, also known as the unsubscribed. Now, this is one of the reasons why charities cannot use the soft opt-in, because they actually do not sell products or services. So they can only do that through the consent route. There is also something else to bear in mind. Again, these are the instructions from the PECA, is that if you are targeting an organization, like a limited company, for example, then you can use the soft opt-in approach. So in other words, you do not need consent. But again, always allow for them to opt out. When you're using the soft opt-in, the lawful basis for processing this data under the GDPR would be legitimate interest. So not consent, but legitimate interest. And as part of that, you are required to carry out a legitimate interest assessment, which then has a balancing test that is designed to ensure that the interests of the organization do not supersede or infringes on the rights and freedom of the individual. So it's a really important piece of document that you need to have, because you could be asked to provide a copy. You must have one to support your claim as the legitimate interest as your lawful basis for using that data in that way. Now, in your experience, James, could you give us some example of how organizations have exploited personal data for marketing purposes?
Yeah, it's quite often you can sign up for a 10% discount, or you sign up for a special offer, and then all of a sudden you're bombarded with SMS, text messages, you're bombarded with emails, having taken the discount, registered for what you believe to be a newsletter, and then it's constant emails or text messages, even phone calls when they need to shift some more product or services. That is most definitely one of those. There have been some big names that have got themselves into a lot of trouble with how much they have done that. I can think of one particular food distributor
Yeah.
that has had
I
multiple
had them
fines.
I had them even knocking on my door as well.
Oh, blimey. And
Yeah.
that's it. They will, and I think the reliance on using the tech to save them money elsewhere has led to them becoming a real pain, because it starts
Yes.
to become a nuisance. And as you said, when it's collecting any of that kind of data when it comes to marketing, cookie policies, they're always a really big one. So many people forget to give the choice to select the type of cookies that they're going to go with. If you're online looking at anything and are considering putting in an email address or a mobile telephone number, it's worthwhile thinking about the fact of what that might entail down the line. It will overuse it.
Yes. And there is a particular retailer, they also have an online presence, that when you go to the checkout, they ask you whether you want the receipt to be mailed to you. I always say no, because I know that the moment I give them my email address, they're going to put it on their mailing list, and I'm going to be bombarded daily with their emails, their promotional emails. And actually, I bought something from them. This was a couple of years ago, through their online retail website. And because I bought from them, again, they added me straight away to their mailing list, which is fine. Is the soft opt-in that I mentioned earlier. But first of all, their email, when I received it, did not contain the opt-out button. So that's a fringe. But also, I was getting daily emails from them, and there is no need. That is way too much. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because then it also touches on your rights of privacy.
Quite often you find that they don't monitor their own data, because I have made the mistake of giving my email address to get the receipt emailed to me. I'm terrible with paperwork, so having a receipt emailed to me is a benefit at times. However, then when the same retailer sends you 3 emails at the same point in time,
Yes.
it becomes a bugbear. But it means they're not monitoring data somewhere properly. That's being dumped into a CSV file somewhere, which then raises other red flags.
And going on to the cookie element that you mentioned, again, this is the PECA that sort of it regulates that. Again, under the GDPR, consent should be the way you give consent and the way you withdraw consent should be of equal effort, if you want.
Yeah.
Okay, so you've got various cookies pop-ups where you got the accept button, but then if you don't want to accept, you've got to go through multiple clicks. And then they're very clever, because the pop-ups is small and you only see the top where the consent is grayed out, or the button is for the consent. But then if you scroll down, you have all of those legitimate interests, that you have to manually switch them off. And actually, you cannot use legitimate interest when it comes to the non-essential cookies. It can only work with consent. So that it's totally illegal, not acceptable. And the ICO is doing a campaign going through, they've done the top 100 website last year, and then now go to the next 100, where they are basically, forcing, because the ICO is also the regulator of the PECA regulation, they're sort of forcing them to get the pop-up consent correct, with the 2 buttons of equal size, etc. Because, it is become a nonsense. And again, it's clever marketing that is trying to exploit people's data and frustrate people, because then they just simply, okay, whatever, and they just press the accept without understanding and realizing that, how their data is being used.
Yep. And I think that's something that I was going to bring up today, Christina, was for anybody that is thinking of handing over their data.
Yeah.
Just think to yourself about what the impact could be. When you're handing over that data, you don't know how, as I mentioned, you don't know how well they're looking after that data. So that can become a potential problem. I think there are some big brands that all of a sudden, once you've signed up and you've got them, then all of a sudden you can end up with people phoning up saying that they're from that company that may not, it may be an association, not actually from that company, trying to sell insurances or extra items. Mobile phone companies have got, you suddenly seem to get massive amounts of phone calls from from call centers in regards to what their offers, their new offers are. Then it's the fact of marketing is huge now, isn't it? And there's always a constant fight for data. Just have a look at what it is and where it is you're putting your data into, because social engineering exploitation is so big and it's still rising. So many brands are being spoofed, and those people are after your details for other reasons. And you've also got the phishing attacks. They can come through those emails, and we've all seen the ones for major distributors saying that we couldn't deliver your package. Click this link. Most of the time, that's not going to happen. So if you are into marketing and you are looking at that side, make sure you're covering that off. Make sure that you've got good policies in place for your data protection, that it's not just being dumped into a CSV file on an Excel spreadsheet, possibly shared on SharePoint. Make sure you're covering your GDPR and you've got the right things in place. Make sure your security is right on your website. So many websites we see these days where they're not patched, they're not up to date. Well, all of a sudden that can be a route into all of your data. And one thing I still don't understand, Christina, is why people are still using email, because email now, it has gone so far backwards. And I'm going to ask you some questions now in regards to what that will look like, because I started off in my business development role at a time which meant you went and knocked on doors. You didn't have email as an option. Yeah, that is giving everyone an idea as to how old I am. But email marketing wasn't a thing. Well, and then it became the only thing that you did. You didn't do anything else. You didn't send things out in the post anymore. You didn't go and knock doors. You just sent emails. It was great for businesses because it meant that they didn't need as many staff, because you put a bit of code in the top so every client's name went in and sent it out as a bulk mailer using a bulk mailing tool. Then people started to get wise to this. We're looking at the cybersecurity element. So all of a sudden, spam filters come in, and they're getting more and more protective. So they are programmed to look for language that is sales, that is marketing, that's over friendly, so to try and stop these things getting through. So now all of a sudden, some of these don't get through. Some of them from websites and groups that you can be members of, the information doesn't get through to you because it's stuck in a spam filter somewhere and no one knows where it is. So I don't quite understand why people are still using them, to be honest. I don't think it's a viable option, especially if you're bulk doing it. If you're under 1,000 contacts, then I think there is there can be an option for it. But even then, you're probably not going to get more than 50% of that delivered. Not that I want to put people off using it, but I think there is that to be said for, especially for email. Mobiles as well. You can block numbers very simply now. So we're very lucky. The number ranges that we have in this country are almost unlimited, but you're going to, at some point in time, there will be where these call centers can't get hold of them. So my question to you really, Christina, is why do people still worry about email marketing for a start?
Because they're still doing it. That's the reason why, it's because organizations are still using that channel to promote their business, their products and services. They do have obviously, a legitimacy in promoting their business. So the law has to allow them to do that to a degree. And this is where the GDPR is trying to then mitigate their needs and their interests versus breaching the privacy and data protection of the individual, trying to create a bit of a balancing act. But I think social media going forward will become much more prominent for promoting your services, your products, etc. I think at some point they're going to see a switch and see a reduction on those emails and moving more towards the social media. But I think it's probably a long time away. There is still a lot of emphasis on creating a mailing list, sending out emails. If not daily, they do it weekly, that's for sure, which I still think in some instances is still too much.
I've had this conversation with a number of organizations quite recently about what's the best time between emails. Well, firstly, you need to think about how much new you've got to actually say, but also realistically, do you need to email anybody more than once a month? You're not a newspaper. You don't need to put something new out every day. Think about it. what needs to be delivered needs to be useful to the end user.
Yeah, there's the counter argument where they say that before someone buys from you, you have to have 6 touch points. So I suppose that's the reason why they send, emails, promotional material emails out every day, because they want those quick sales, and
they do
those organizations that have, they need to sell a lot, they've got big targets. So I suppose, we need to look at from both sides. But equally, I'm not sure that by sending a promotional email out every day actually achieves anything. I'm not sure that it does.
Well, it becomes noise and it becomes spam, doesn't it? So I think, it's finding the right level for sure from a marketing perspective, but it's looking at what it looks like especially from a GDPR side, of how you are using that data. And that was always one of the biggest things of going, well, how do we use that data?
Yeah, because the point is that if you, like I did with that retailer that I mentioned earlier, because I started receiving emails every single day, I then unsubscribed. So actually they achieved the opposite of what they were trying to achieve. And I think, a lot of people will at some point, get wiser and start clicking on those unsubscribe buttons, or look for them if they're not evident. Because actually, if it's too much, then people will get fed up with it. And then instead of gaining clients, you're actually going to lose them. Absolutely. So you're achieving, the opposite of what you're trying to get to. But I suppose you and I are not going to resolve this. We're 2 small fish in the pond.
But we can at least, I think, let's hope that some of the listeners will, at least have a think about where they're putting those email addresses, where they're putting those phone numbers. That will help.
Yes. So the whole point of this podcast is to generate awareness. And so hopefully you and I have done that on this topic today. Yeah, James, thank you ever so much for joining us today. And if our audience would like to get in touch with you at Uptech, how can they do that?
Just reach out to James at uptech.co.uk, and then we can have a chat, book a call. Quite happy to have a online coffee, or even come and see you in person.
Fantastic, James. Thank you very much. And if any of you would like to get in touch with me, you can do so at info@cvgsolutions.co.uk, or simply look at us on our website, cvgsolutions.co.uk. We're also on social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. Again, just search for CVG Solutions or for my name. And James, you're also on social media as well, on LinkedIn.
I am, yes, and I always forget to mention it.
Brilliant. Thank you ever so much, and have a great weekend, everybody.
See you later. Thanks very much, Christina.